With the way Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen was moving, you may be wondering who Gege planned to brutally delete in the Culling Games. So, I've made a list of some major upcoming deaths, if you're too impatient to wait for the anime or too illiterate to read the manga. Now, it goes without saying this video includes spoilers, but since you've already clicked the video, might as well just watch it. Anyways, onto the list. First up is Naoya Zenin. As most of you already know, the slick and arrogant aura farmer didn't live up to his name. Despite his broken-ass cursed technique and a pride that could level that of Gilgamesh, he was a complete embarrassment, starting out by getting whooped by Choso before Maki treated his face like a baseball. And even though he managed to survive initially, he was given an average British greeting by Maki's mom. However, it shouldn't come as a surprise, his stubborn ass would return as a vengeful spirit, along with a burning desire to kill Maki and prove he was the one to stand beside Toji in terms of strength.
You tripping, bro. You tripping.
In chapter 191, we finally see him and Maki reunite, where he actually caused her some problems at first, as he had managed to reach Mach 3. But when he unleashed his domain expansion, which required anyone inside to move like him, or they would freeze for 1 second, where he began complementing his own capabilities, only for Maki to impale him from behind. Pause. But how exactly did she do it? Just like Toji, she had no cursed energy. In other words, a barrier technique recognizes her as a building, even if the domain's guaranteed hit. And right before getting exercised, he realized the only fighter equal to Toji was Maki. Next one up is Reggie Star, another powerful sorcerer in the Culling Game, who dresses how I imagine Drake wants to. He is one of the sorcerers reincarnated from the past in order to participate. He led his own group of sorcerers, including Remy, who in return for her safety was supposed to lure in targets with her talents. But after leading Megumi to Reggie, the two didn't exactly get along. Reggie considered sorcerers nothing but con artists and underestimated Megumi from the get-go. His cursed technique is called contractual recreation, which allows him to recreate anything written on a contract, making it the optimal technique for the real world since receipts classify as contracts. But when Megumi unleashed his domain expansion, Reggie confidently utilized an anti-domain technique called Hollow Wicker Basket. But as you might remember, Megumi's domain is incomplete.
And it's ugly work at best.
Basically making Reggie's barrier useless, as it was made to deflect a guaranteed hit attack. Despite this, Reggie managed to hold his own due to physical strength empowered by cursed energy, which rivaled that of Megumi at 120%. Yet, after managing to escape the domain, Reggie's confidence was his downfall, as the second he dismissed Divine Dog, Megumi used it to deal the finishing blow. In the end, Reggie gave Megumi all his points, before telling him to let fate toy with him before dying like a fool. Although Reggie didn't serve a major purpose in the overarching plot of the series, he was still important when it comes to the Culling Game Arc.
Light work.
Next one up is the certified baddie Yuki Tsukumo, who unlike Reggie serves a significant purpose in the plot. Not only is she a special grade sorcerer, but a former star plasma vessel, which explains her complicated past with Tengen. However, in the most boring episode of all time, we see her agree to protect him alongside Choso,
Are you really crying?
which they knew would put them in the direct path of Kenjaku. So after Choso pushed past his limits, Kenjaku simply revealed another cursed technique called anti-gravity system, basically making Choso useless. But before being killed, Yuki disrupts their battle, even calling him Big Brother as a sign of respect. Yuki's innate technique, Star Rage, allows her to grant virtual mass to herself and her Shikigami, Garuda, making her attacks devastatingly destructive, which she displayed by straight up bashing Kenjaku's head in. It even made him question if he was capable of handling her himself, forcing him to use domain expansion, which was exactly what Yuki and Tengen had planned. Unfortunately, Kenjaku didn't close the barrier, a feat we've only seen Sukuna do, opening a domain and activating a technique without closing the barrier, which resulted in Tengen's plan falling apart, and Yuki getting hit by the Fujitora special. Luckily, she managed to save herself using reverse curse technique. Meanwhile, Choso returned with newfound motivation, where they came dangerously close to actually killing him until he replenished his cursed technique, making Yuki understand they couldn't win. So when Choso tried sacrificing himself, she encouraged him to live, as Tengen removed him from the barrier. But as a result, she was cut straight in half by Kenjaku's domain's guaranteed hit, making him believe he had won, and dropped his guard, until she grabbed his leg, increasing Star Rage's mass far beyond the limit that kept her safe. It ultimately created a black hole, making Kenjaku piss himself most definitely. But of course, he survived, which really made me dream of a few panels of Sukuna manhandling him completely. Nothing better than when the villain meets an even bigger villain. But naturally, that wouldn't fit the plot, so instead, we lost a baddie. Next one up is Hajime Kashima, also known as the God of Lightning, who was a sorcerer from 400 years ago, inhabiting the body of someone Kenjaku prepared as a vessel. His main objective during the Culling Game was battling Sukuna, as he was bored of fighting people weaker than himself. But after running into a gambling-addicted degenerate, he was actually defeated, where he went from antagonist to supporting character out of respect for Hikari, and with the hopes of still facing Sukuna. So as Hikari kept Uraume busy, Kashimo finally came face to face with Sukuna, where he asked if he was born the strongest or earned the title later on, wanting to learn from his philosophy, as he himself had never been able to display kindness while knowing nothing of weakness. He basically wanted to know whether true strength was solitude, which Sukuna promised to answer after their fight. So Kashimo activated his innate technique, Mythical Beast Amber, which reconstructs flesh in order to manifest phenomena of electricity, causing Kashimo's body to far exceed the realm of humans, where he actually managed to hurt Sukuna, forcing him to complete his transformation. And against Sukuna's true form, Kashimo didn't stand a chance. After he was killed, we see a vision of Sukuna claiming those who challenged him back then weren't cursing him. They were reaching for acknowledgement from the strongest, and if that's the love they're offering, then the strongest should answer it in kind. Sukuna calls Gojo and Kashimo greedy, because even at the top, they still mourn the same loneliness. Kashimo asks if Sukuna ever grows dissatisfied, but he replies he doesn't.
No.
Next one up is Tsumiki Fushiguro, who I really didn't expect to be on this list, but as everyone knows at this point, Gege does not care. Tsumiki was the stepsister of Sea Urchin Head, who unknowingly ended up playing a large part in the Culling Game Arc. She was chosen by Kenjaku to be a participant of the Culling Game, and made into the incarnated host of Yorozu, a sorcerer from the Heian era, who was one of those psycho chicks you think you want until they eat your dog. She was completely obsessed with Sukuna, and wanted to find and kill him to teach him about love. So upon reuniting with Sukuna, Yorozu confessed to him and somehow managed to form a binding vow, which demanded the two get married if she defeated him. But when Sukuna kept only utilizing Megumi's cursed technique, she threw a temper tantrum, demanding only to be touched by his technique, as she wasn't into kinky stuff. Yorozu's innate technique was called construction, and it allowed her to recreate any substance she recognized except for special cursed tools, depending on her training. And in a desperate attempt to make Sukuna take her seriously, she even unleashed her own domain expansion, leaving her mildly surprised she was about to win, as Sukuna didn't open his own domain. However, what she didn't know was that Sukuna was about to summon the Obstapa, who splattered her in a single hit. Now, keep in mind, Sea Urchin Head witnessed everything from inside Sukuna, making it even more messed up. Next up is Ryu Ishigori, a sorcerer from 400 years ago, who looked like he came straight from a bizarre adventure. Just like Kashimo, he was driven by a desire to fight worthy opponents. So when he came across Yuta fighting Uro, someone I can't wait to see animated,
A little strip on the ab, you know what I mean?
he interrupted their battle, blasting cursed energy out of his hair like a cannon, which is more or less a direct description of his innate technique. But to make it a little cooler, they made sure to mention he is the only sorcerer that can still release the same amount of power regardless of if his cursed technique is activated or not. But Yuta didn't hesitate to close the distance, choosing to fight Ishigori up close instead, where it quickly turned into a scrap between the three of them. However, once Yuta stopped holding back by releasing Rika and utilizing cursed speech, it was no longer a fair fight. So to get away from Rika, all three of them were forced into releasing their domain expansions, which his only actual function was an excuse to create a cool panel, as Kuroshi broke the barriers 3 panels later, where Uro got distracted and paid the price. Meanwhile, Jojo believed he now had the upper hand, since cursed technique takes time to replenish after using a domain, a rule that applied to everyone but him. However, he must have forgotten Yuta is unnecessarily broken, and his cursed energy returned way too fast, ending the fight by reflecting Ishigori's technique back at him. Yet he didn't kill him, only forced him into transferring his points. Ishigori's death came quite a few chapters later, where he happened to run into Sukuna, who sliced his face open. Now onto the most important one by far, the honored one. After chilling in the prison realm for 19 days, the others were finally ready to release him, but hesitated as the prison realm operates as a dimension where time does not flow, meaning it might have felt like centuries for Gojo.
This place is all kinds of bad. It'll all work out somehow.
And they were low-key scared he'd lost his mind, which could create a problem even bigger than Sukuna or Kenjaku. However, after taking precautions, Angel used her technique to open the prison realm, only for it to vanish alongside Gojo, leaving them confused. It was then revealed Kenjaku had placed the prison realm 8,000 meters underwater, accompanied by a cursed spirit, all in an attempt to kill Gojo if the seal disappeared. But in under a second, Gojo appeared before Kenjaku, leaving him questioning his decisions. However, he'd brought along Sukuna, who actually wanted to fight Gojo, but after punching Uraume for speaking, Gojo wanted to reschedule their fight to the 24th of December, to which Sukuna and Kenjaku agreed. In the meantime, Gojo was caught up to speed speed on the death count, while Mei Mei made over $5 billion in pay-per-view to broadcast the fight between the strongest sorcerer of today versus the strongest sorcerer in history. So when the day finally came, Gojo made sure to clarify Sukuna was the challenger and mentioned he wasn't scared to wail on Megumi, as he looked too much like Toji. And after a fight so goddamn exquisite, it was enough to make a grown man cry, where I feel like it was made pretty clear Gojo would have won if it hadn't been for the Obstapa, who truly lived up to his name. Not only did Maharaga adapt to Unlimited Void, he even created the model that allowed Sukuna to penetrate Gojo's inviolability. By targeting the space around him, anything inside would get cut. In the end, Gojo was given the Yamamoto treatment in front of a live broadcast, where Sukuna called him magnificent and vowed to never forget him. And that was about it. If I missed anyone or straight up misunderstood something, don't hesitate to insult my entire family tree. If not, click subscribe